Welcome to Conversations Matter. I'm Hans Sickler.
And I'm Molly Bergholm.
Molly and I are big fans of having real, deep conversations. So sit back, relax, be present, and really enjoy this one. So today we're sitting down with Swami Kashi. He's a good friend of yours, Molly, and when we had this session, it was the first time I'd met Swami Kashi. But wow, what a conversation. Swami started out in a kibbutz, became an Israeli commando, and ended up embracing a spiritual life and traveling the world, passing his knowledge and wisdom and love to people all around the world. Great conversation we're going to have to share with you today. And it all started out with us having a nice kebab in a small little diner on Las Olas in Fort Lauderdale. A really special conversation.
So special. And seeing you two together is part of the joy too. You both have an incredible sense of discernment, and watching Kashi's wisdom, the depth of the ancient traditions connect with you in your modern discernment and wisdom is something really special. And I think everyone's going to really enjoy it.
Makes me feel like a novice meditator when I'm around Swami and you.
You're not a novice. Let's keep going.
I want to really thank you for inviting me. It is really, you are my best friend for so many years, and I'm so happy to meet Hans. It is just amazing to be here, and you are doing something so important. It is so inspiring and lovely. So thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you.
And that concludes the interview. I think that was great. Yeah. Wow. How do you beat that?
Yeah. So
we didn't pay him to say that.
You were asking me about my story and this transformation. And although I can see that for people looking from outside, it can be quite interesting. When I think about it, it feels almost like not boring, but it is, for me, it looks like so ordinary. And there are no big dramas in my life, and it's not like I hit some bottom and I needed to climb up or something. It is just that my life, very in a smooth sailing, led me to where I am. So, yeah, I was born in a kibbutz in Israel, which in itself is something kind of unusual.
Tell us what a kibbutz is, for those who may not know.
Yeah, kibbutz is kind of a commune in which all families are, economically, it is one unit. So you don't get salary, you don't get paid, but everything is being taken care of. And I was actually not growing with my family so much, I was going with my friends. I would go to my parents' place at 4 p.m. and by 8 p.m. I go back to where my friends were. And I sleep with my age group, with my friends, not with my family. And it is old system. Today it is no more like this. But that was the first station in my life. And then probably the next important station was my military service. I was serving in a top commando unit in Israel. And that also contributed a lot to my personality, my belief system, of course. And then few years later, not immediately, but few years later, I started to do yoga, and suddenly my world changed again for a completely new direction. And that took me to uncharted places, And yeah, so it just happened.
So when you went to India, tell me some about that. When you got to India and found your guru, your teacher.
Well, actually, I went to India a few times before I even went to my first yoga class, because in Israel, usually after people finish their military service, they go and travel the world. And I did go to India, and that was kind of mochileros type of traveling. And I didn't see the deeper side of India. I didn't find anything fascinating. I just loved being there. But then after starting to practice yoga very seriously, very regularly, And hearing about the yogis of the Himalayas, the great yogis of India, as we all hear from the books and the stories, I felt that I don't want to hear about them in second hand or third hand. I actually want to meet them. If there are such great yogis, why shouldn't I meet them? And I count myself extremely fortunate because I met an extraordinary and amazing person who became my guru, my teacher. And really, whatever I'm doing today, whatever I am today, is nothing but due to his contribution, his grace.
Could you tell us his name and a little more about him?
Well, his name is Swami Chaitanyananda, and he was a direct disciple of Swami Shivananda. Swami Shivananda was a very famous monk who lived in Rishikesh. He passed away in 1963. And my teacher spent a number of years with him. And then he went to a small town up in the Himalayas called Uttarkashi. This is where I spend the time now. And he lived there for 50 years, hardly going anywhere, always engaged in meditation and study and doing spiritual practices. And he was a very amazing person.
That's so interesting. I'm such a novice. I've been, meditating, 4 or 5 years? But people who've known me from before my meditation and now say that they call me Hans 2.0. Like my priorities are different, my value systems are different. And it's really interesting to me. And the joke I always make is, well, if I keep down this path, I will end up in a loincloth in Varanasi.
Not a bad choice.
Not a bad choice, right?
Yeah.
It's a journey. So I can really, really relate to that. But I can also relate, my two best friends when I was growing up in Italy were Israelis. And we spent 5 years together, partying and everything. And then I went off to college and they went back to Israel and they went to do their military service. And I didn't see them for 4 years. And the next time I saw them, they were completely different people. Like I had gone through college and partied and done my thing and I was ready to go work. They had seen whatever. Both of them were in the commandos, and I still remember looking into Itai's eyes and saying, "That's not the same guy I knew 4 years ago."
Yeah, so, the army is doing it to you.
Yeah, so and he couldn't talk about anything he did, and I was telling him everything I did, and I almost felt a loss because we weren't the same people anymore. So when you say, "Oh, it's sort of a natural path from." Nothing radical happened, but it is quite radical.
That's what I said. I can recognize how when people look at it from outside, for them it is fascinating quite often. From my point of view, I don't feel like anything like significant happened. I can recognize it, but that's my feeling. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. So let me ask you this.
And there is one more point. In some people's cases, they come to the yogic path or whatever new path they enter into their life out of a great crisis. Something terrible happens, some big crisis takes place, and that gives them the boost to start something new. But in my case, it was not like this. It is just, I had a wonderful life and one thing led to the other, and I'm sitting in front of you.
So because there was no dramatic thing, that there must be some thread that unites it then. So how do you see those threads, those 3 chapters of life? Well, what is the continuum, values, or what is or commitment, deep renunciation or devotion to something larger than yourself, or what is it?
Well, first of all, I would say that living in a kibbutz is making you very independent because you don't have your parents to cling on to. You have to manage between your friends, and it gives you some independence. Then the military service is giving you a lot of discipline. Naturally. And independency and discipline are the 2 cardinal qualities that a yogi needs. So it is really a very good preparation in this sense. And then also to the first part of your question, when I started studying the philosophy behind yoga, it just clicked. It felt so obvious. How couldn't I see it before? It is not that I needed to struggle to adopt it. It was so obvious. Yes, this is the way it is. How couldn't I see it always? So it was just so natural to slip into this new system.
So what is your mission? What is how does a yogi define success?
Well, that's a very difficult question. It depends on which level we are asking. But I would say that on a relative level, just on day-to-day life, I feel that I have the call to share those beautiful truths that I received freely, open-handedly from my teachers, from my preceptors. And right now it is my duty to share it as much as possible with interested people. Being able to do that, this is kind of a fulfillment, a goal. On a more deeper spiritual level, to find freedom, to find real inner freedom, this is my goal. And I recognize that I have a long way to go. I recognize that I still have a lot of weaknesses that I need to work with. And I enjoy the path. It is a feast, you know. But I still have a lot to do.
When I talk with Molly, she's a beacon for me in this whole thing. And when she talks about meditating, it's like it's aspirational for me to meditate like she does and to get the peace that she does. But she always talks about confronting her weaknesses. And doing exercises, this deliberacy in saying, I'm self-aware enough to know that this scares me, so I'm going to confront it. And if it's a journey for her, imagine little old me, right? But there's nothing little old about. But there's so much peace when you do that, though. Those moments where you're completely centered and allowing something to hit you that all the resistance that exists in life can prevent you from doing that. Or I always say the blinders that we put on purposefully not to have to deal with those things.
Yeah, I totally seeing and feeling what you are saying. And indeed, for me also, the first thing is to be able to even acknowledge what is going on. That's probably 50% of the work. Just to recognize and acknowledge, yes, there is something here that maybe served me sometime in the past, but I don't need it right now. Yeah. I would like to overcome it. And this is the first step. And once we are able to do it, it will be so much easier. And meditation is the greatest tool to recognize these things. Yeah.
You do a lot of reading?
Not as I used to do. I used to read much more. Now I read a lot less. I would like also to go back to it at some point. But, we have periods in our lives. Sometimes something becomes more meaningful and other times something else becomes more meaningful.
So Swami Kashi, I wanted to ask this to thread what you just said with something you said earlier, which is when you heard these yogic truths, you just said, how could I never have seen this? Like, it just seems so obvious.
So
it all makes
simple.
Yeah. And then now what you're saying about that, and I know you've gone through profound times of deep self-inquiry, both internal as well as deep studies in the ashrams and in the Himalayas, and that has been a huge part. But there's all those layers of integration where you first learn something, like you read it in a book. And then there's the deeper layer where you really make it your own experience, where you really internalize the wisdom of that. And then there's the next layer where you share it with others and you use it to alleviate suffering in the world. And so if you could maybe tell a little bit of those truths that you first interpreted, or the ones perhaps that have been the most potent, and then talk about how you've made those your own, how they've revealed themselves through the path.
Well, it will be a little challenging in the setting we have to talk about it without sounding completely weird, because this stuff
we
is
like
so
weird here.
far and out. It is so different than the way we used to think normally, the way we are trained. And if you just say it like this, you sound like a tree hugger or so, I don't know. So you sound so strange. Nevertheless, I will say it. I don't mind to sound weird. So I'm talking about a philosophy which is called the Advaita Vedanta philosophy. It is traced back thousands of years, and it is stating that underlying reality, there is something, there is an entity which is the reality, whereas everything we see around us is kind of an appearance. In a sense, not exactly, but just to give us the sense or the idea regarding it, is a little bit like watching a movie in the theater. When you watch a movie in the theater, you actually see two things. There is the drama that is displayed, and then there is the screen. The screen is the reality. The drama is only an appearance. We go to see a movie not for the screen. Nobody is going to the theater in order to watch a screen. We go to see the drama, right? But actually, when you sit there and watch, the only real thing that you are watching is the screen. You have to forget the screen in order to be able to appreciate the drama. In the same manner, what we call here reality, what we call here the world, is like the drama. It is a drama, right?
Yes.
Our life is a drama. But there is a screen. And that screen is what we are missing. We are not able to recognize. And therefore, we are carried away by this drama. Now, when I go to watch a movie, I actually do it. I'm actually doing it whenever I go to see a movie. Sometime during the movie, when I watch, I just shift my perception. Instead of absorbing the drama, what is going on, I just recognize the screen. I just sit and I recognize the screen and recognize the different play of lights on the screen. And in life, we can do the same. It is possible to shift our perception from a drama perception into screen perception. And we are seeking, yogis are seeking this screen perception because this is the reality. In this sense, when you are able to distance yourself a little bit from this drama perception and just recognize the screen, acknowledging the drama, but without the participation, without being carried away by it, life can be something altogether different.
So I want to just share a moment that connects these past two with an experience that is so deeply personal to my heart that I've never shared it publicly, but it makes me uncomfortable to share it, which makes me feel like I should do it. Last year, I went to Israel with Swami Kashi and two of our other dear friends, Yana and Ishwari. And we went to a lot of different amazing places. But one of the places Swami Kashi took my son Santiago and I to was Galilee, where, of course, Jesus taught on the Sea of Galilee there, and where many of the miracles were performed, where he, walked on water and, multiplied the loaves of bread and the fish to feed everyone. And, we had gone to so many amazing holy sites. Of course, they were incredible. Each had their own energetic imprint. But there was this little chapel. I think it's called the Church of the Primacy, St. Peter, right? That's the one. The name seems irrelevant.
Yeah, I know which chapel.
This little chapel, stone chapel with stained glass windows right on the Sea of Galilee.
In Capernaum.
Yeah. We walked, we were walking, talking, having an ordinary conversation, and then we stepped into this chapel. Just suddenly had one of the most transformative experiences, really, of my entire life. It was this feeling, of course, we hear the golden rule in every religion, love thy neighbor as thyself. Every religion has its own version of that. Every tribal culture has its own version of that. But when I walked into that cathedral, that little chapel, I had this profound sense of being welcomed for exactly who I am. Like absolutely nothing was refused. absolutely nothing was cut off. Absolutely nothing was judged or pushed away. It felt like the essence of everything. I mean, words just, the reason I haven't told it is it feels that words limit the experience, but it was this, it was earth-shattering for me, like this feeling of having everything be loved so fully that suffering fell away. And it was beautiful. I think you saw that I had left the planet and was somewhere else. The whole thing unfolded into a very deep meditative experience. And you and Santiago stayed for a little while, and then you went outside to the sea. And I just sat there and meditated, and it unfolded into one of the deepest experiences of my life of just all of this suffering is where we are pushing ourselves away, where we're not welcoming ourselves, where we're judging others or not welcoming them. The suffering, you cannot have conflict where there's connection. You could have a disagreement, but if the connection's still there, then separation doesn't have to occur. Mm-hmm. And that's if it happens inside of you or it's if it happens with another. I think it's the same. And what I felt in that moment, which I feel is, we have all these things we think about Christianity and Jesus, but if there was a message of his life, it was love thy neighbor as thyself. The capital S self.
And of course, you have to love yourself first. So then you can have place in your heart to love your neighbors too. Mm-hmm. Because if you hate yourself, I don't think Jesus wants you to love your neighbor as thyself, right?
Sure. and as thyself meaning our highest self, as our highest, to realize that our true nature is the movie screen. It is peace itself.
Exactly.
And all the places we judge ourselves or reject ourselves or say, I should have done this sooner or I shouldn't have done that. Those are the places where suffering is created when in fact...
we forget our own self.
We forget our own self. And we couldn't, And so that revelation has been... I still feel it as if it's happening now. Like it's never left that profound sense of welcoming. And since then, it's become a paradigm where I truly try, whatever comes up, I try to welcome it like as if you were picking up a baby. Mm. Like when we pick up a baby, we pick them up with so much love, so much care, such attention. And can we treat ourselves that way? Can we treat other people that way? That instead of when we cry or someone else gets angry or upset, we don't lock the baby in the closet. We don't scream at it to stop. We find out what it needs, what it wants, and we give it that love. So can we welcome ourselves in the same way with such profound generosity? And it feels like the greatest gift we can give ourselves and anyone else. So
there is one more quality to what you are describing that you didn't mention, and I'm almost sure you will agree with me, and that is simplicity. Mm. Because this love, this state is so simple. Mm-hmm. And when we look at it, the problem is that we are complicated. Mm-hmm. It is not that the truth is so complicated that we need to strive to understand it. It is that the truth is so simple that we are not seeing it. We are so complex. Our sadhana, our spiritual practice is not about becoming more complex so we can comprehend the truth. It is about becoming more simple. It is kind of shedding all the baggage that we have rather than putting on new coats over ourselves.
The screen is simple, right? It's the drama on the screen that's complex.
Exactly. And the screen is right there, bare. You don't need to add to it anything, and it is always there. That's also, it is always there. The fact that I'm miserable now, it is not because my true nature is miserable. It is because the misery is overpowering or kind of covering my true nature.
Almost louder than it, yeah.
And what I need to do is not to find my happiness. I just need to shed off all these layers, and then my nature is revealed.
So it's interesting you use the word shed. Because I feel like, I mean, and maybe it's just a little idiosyncratic thing, but I feel like the word shed means like I have to take it off. Whereas it feels to me more like it needs to be welcomed. Like, I see you. I know you're there because you're hurting. How can I love you in a new way? How can I love that part of myself in another way that feels like what Hans was saying, like, it's interesting you were saying about like, Hans 2.0, why couldn't I have done this sooner? It's like, as your good friend and colleague and partner in this, like I would say, like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you were Hans 1.0 and 1.5 and all that, because that's what makes you special. That's what makes you wise. That makes you the number one person I call when I have some harebrained idea and like need the honest truth about the reality of it. Like that's what is your imprint. So like those things, like when we welcome them like that, and like, I don't want you to be any different than you are. I don't want you to be any different than you are.
But I would like myself, or the way I perceive myself, to be lighter. Sometimes there is some extra stuff that I feel it is not serving me, and it is not myself. It is in addition to myself, and I would be comfortable to move on. I don't regret maybe that I had it one time in my life, but I'm very happy to be now without it.
Okay, so I want to ask both of you this question. What do you do when you find that place inside yourself? Like, what do you do when you find that, oh God, I can't believe
at that time it doesn't matter what you do. If you are in that place in yourself, it doesn't matter what you do.
No, but like, let's ask sincerely, like, what is something about yourself that you are trying to work on, that you're trying to evolve, and how are you working on it?
Well, I will give you one example for me. Sometimes I see myself as lazy. I could do more and study more, much more than what I do. And sometimes I don't have the energy and the drive to do what I believe will be good for me to do. And this is something I would like to change. I would like to find this enthusiasm and find this power to do everything as I believe and as I see it, and not being lazy about it. And therefore, this is, I don't spend hours crying why I'm lazy, but I'm also acknowledging that there is this laziness in my life, and this is something I will be happy to leave behind.
So what do you do about it? Like, how do you make friends with laziness so that you can transcend that state?
I lie on the hammock and enjoy my life.
So you don't, you just give into it. You're like, okay.
Well, sometimes that's what happens.
I agree you are sometimes lazy, by the way.
Sometimes I just give in, and then also when I give in, I'm just fine. I don't regret and I don't look back, but I recognize that this is the situation. And on other times I say, okay, time to do something, and I get up and I do. I also, if you ask my friends if I'm lazy, they will laugh, because for them I seem to be like a crazy guy who moves all the time and not able to sit for a moment and keep doing. I'm just talking from my point of view, because I'm looking from the inside, and I'm not critical of myself. I don't think I'm a bad guy. I don't have any hard feelings about it. But you were asking what stuff I want to change. Yeah. This is something I would like to change.
But it's an interesting perspective, because we do make this goal orientation of like constantly having to be so successful and make everything happen in a certain way. And I think it's important to know that sometimes that stopping where you just do nothing, which I think we all three find in meditation, where you really just stop and are fully present, even if it's just deep listening, that stopping is the fertile breeding ground for everything I do.
100%. My teacher used to say, you have to find some time during the day where you don't do anything, not even meditating. Meditating is not doing nothing.
Right.
Spend time just being every day. It is so, this is not a waste of time. I'm talking about that I have something that I think I should do, and
you're postponing it.
I just postpone it. I could have done it long ago, and I don't. And it's nothing special for me. I think many people, others. Again, it's not like I'm feeling terrible about it. But this was just an example for something I want to bring a change, and I don't see it as a helpful force in my life. I don't need to feel unique in my laziness. That's not helping me. I also not feel very ambitious to achieve great things. I just want to be able to do what I decide to do and be helpful for other people.
So Hans, what is the thing that you are working on in yourself, and what are you doing about it?
Well, it's this always do your best thing. It's making space for other things to happen. So my tendency is to fill the day, and I spend a lot of energy not doing that. A lot of energy, whether it's my meditating, my working out. I tell people, I don't work all day. I might have 3 meetings a day and a phone call, but that's the work. The work on me is as important, right? So for me, I know what I want to do. I want to be with people I enjoy, go to places I enjoy, and focus on the elements that make me feel good about myself. But sometimes life gets in the way of that, and all of a sudden the pattern's been disrupted, and you look back over the last 30 days and it hasn't been that way. So for me, it's really every day recognizing that I'm working on the things that I want to be working on, whether they are for my customers or whether they're for me. Mm-hmm. That's work, because I'm a type A CEO. I run after a shiny object and I make an opportunity out of it, as opposed to stopping and seeing the opportunities that are there. It's a discipline thing. There's a book called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, and he talks about resistance in life, and the way to eliminate resistance is through discipline, through continued practice. Whether it's the artistic muse to write a book or anything you want to achieve, talent isn't enough. Discipline plus talent creates greatness in achieving things.
Yeah, we say that discipline is freedom. Usually we don't. Why we don't like discipline? We say that we want to be free, therefore we don't like discipline. What is freedom? Freedom is to do what I want to do, right? But actually, if we look at it, if we are rational beings, and we also want to be happy, and if I'm a rational being and I want to be happy, I will never choose something that I know will give me suffering, right? And how many times a day, how many times an hour we do things that we know are not good for us.
Yeah.
And therefore, it shows that we don't really exercise our free will. Freedom is coming when I have perfect control over my mind. Then I can choose that which is really good for me. And this is what I was talking about, the laziness. Sometimes I choose what is not good for me, knowing that it is not what is good for me. And this is something I would like to change, because it makes me bound. It makes me a slave to my own mind. On the other hand, discipline is that which is giving me the freedom to choose despite of the tendencies of the mind. And this is what constitutes freedom. Mm-hmm.
This phrase is coming up, the intensity of the longing does the work. And when I sit with what brings discipline, like what makes me want to be disciplined, what makes me get up and do things I don't want to do, it's the depth of my longing for what I actually want. That's something both of you have taught me, actually. You're both total manifestors of what you put in your heart, but you both also know how to say no. And I feel like a huge part of discipline is the art of saying no. And
with
how
boundaries.
Yes. And so I wonder if you could, and I'd love to hear both of your thoughts on that, of the potency behind that, behind cultivating that intensity behind the longing so that you will do the work.
I don't know. I don't think I'm good at saying no. But once I decide to do something, I tend to be very ferocious. There's a saying in the logistics business that you land the fish first and beat the profit out of it later. I'm sort of that way. I will land what I want to do and then make out of it what I wanted from it. I think if you try to achieve everything to perfection, you won't start anything. And so for me, if I can get something at 70%, I'll make it 100 as time goes by. But I have to land that fish first. So for me, it's not about not saying no. It's about really, what do I want to achieve, and grab it. And then I know I can make something out of it. So, whether it's writing a book or going to Rio and, I wanted to help in Rio, I go to Rio, I'll find the place where I can be useful, and so I find a lot of people don't act until it's all 100% scripted, and nothing's 100% scripted. So for me, it's more about knowing what you want to go after and going after it and then making it yours.
I do know how to say no when it is necessary. I believe that saying no should always come with kindness, which means it's not so much about my own personal need. What do I want for myself? There is a Buddhist text of a yogi called Shantideva, in which he says something I find very, very wise and also sometimes difficult to understand. He says, every happiness that is there in the world is coming from the desire to make somebody else happy. And every misery that is there in the world is coming from the desire to make myself happy. Now, the first part is easier, right? I want to be happy. If I make other people happy, I eventually bring happiness to myself. We talk about it, the law of karma, and whatever you do is coming back to you and all this stuff.
You could wrap your arms around that.
Yeah.
Right?
But the second part is saying that every misery that is there is coming from the desire to make myself happy. Now, does it mean that it is wrong to want to be happy? No, there's nothing wrong with it. We all want to be happy. This is actually our starting point. Our starting point is that we want to find happiness, and this is what we do. But the point is that when I am fragmenting myself from the fabric, which is reality, from the fabric, which is society, and I see myself as distinct and separate. Now I need security. I need to secure to myself certain things, and I build walls between me and the other. Then I'm bringing suffering for myself, and I'm bringing suffering for others. And therefore, saying no is good, is important. And I feel, yes, I feel that I know when I should say no, and I have no problem to say it in my life. But also I feel that I have to bring into it kindness. I don't need to look to the small prism of my own personal selfish need. I need to have a little greater understanding and greater outlook. And therefore, I will say no where it is right to say no. No, not when I feel that this is going to fulfill my self and definement or something.
So sort of on the happiness thing, I always think of be careful what you ask for, you might get it, because oftentimes what we think makes us happy doesn't. They say the happiest people in the world are people that practice gratitude on a regular basis. Tell me about gratitude.
Yeah, I will tell you first about happiness. I think that, or not me, that philosophy that I was studying is saying that nothing really can make you happy, because happiness is not in things. Happiness is not even in relationships or in experiences. We think many people can relate, happiness is not from things, but my relationships are bringing me happiness, or my experiences are giving me happiness. Happiness is not coming from any of this. Happiness is coming from inside, and this is not just a new agey precept. It is that my essential true nature is pure bliss, and for this very reason I'm searching it. I want to be happy because happiness is my nature. Now, this happiness is kind of covered up by all the stupidity that we have in the mind, all the conditionings, all the belief systems, all the desires, the cravings, all these stuffs that fill our mind. They are covering my true nature, and therefore I'm not able to experience it. When I come in contact with a desirable object, let's say I got something very valuable, or I fell in love with that person, or I find myself in a beautiful experience. We think that the happiness is coming from that object, from that experience, from that person. It is not. It is that in the presence of that object or experience, in that presence, the mind temporarily goes out of the way, and then my true nature is able to manifest.
Where you feel oneness.
Yes.
Sort of
exactly.
like when you walked into the chapel.
We are not feeling oneness when the mind is full of all this stuff. And therefore, what we want is actually getting the mind out of the way. When the mind is out of the way, then we come in touch with that which is our true nature. We experience this happiness. And by accumulation of things, by accumulation of experiences or relationships, we get very temporary sensations of satisfaction. It doesn't last very long. And the more we have, the more we need. I always tell people, look, compare us to our own parents. We have so much more than they had. You cannot even compare what we have materially. Even experientially, we go to all kind of countries and we travel and we do things that our parents, many times, they never dreamt of doing. Can we say that we are more happy as a society than our parents were? I think the answer is no.
Yeah.
If we have so much more and we are not more happy, then how can we think that this happiness is coming from things? It cannot. It is not coming from things. These things can give you a very momentarily satisfaction because they they pacify the mind. They just keep the mind quiet for a short while. And I'm able to experience a little bit more of myself, this happiness which is myself. But very soon, the cravings, the mind come back, and I find myself in a worse situation than I was before. Therefore, all yogic traditions, all spiritual traditions, they direct us to look inside. Stop going after all these silly things. They will not give you happiness. Go inside, find this happiness. And then the external things, they can be there. They are not a problem in themselves. They are not constituting any issue, any problem. Let them be. Relationship will become so much more meaningful, so much more beautiful when your happiness is not depending on them. Your experiences will be so much more pure, so much more valuable when your happiness doesn't depend on them. We have no problem with things. We have no problems with experiences or relationships. The problem is that our happiness depends on them. Then we are bound to suffer.
Gratitude.
Gratitude is a very beautiful thing. Gratitude is this acknowledgement. We were talking about acknowledging when something is wrong, but we need also to acknowledge when something is right. We talked about the emotions as being the motivating force behind our thoughts, behind our actions. In the same manner, when we have gratitude towards something, we are intensifying that impression in the subconscious mind. I'm sorry, I'm talking in some high terminology or whatever, but the idea is that when we have sincere gratitude towards anything, we are intensifying the impression that is associated with it. It is making the experience much deeper. It will go much deeper and it will last much longer, not just to feel good about it, but in order to make it part of our reality. Mm-hmm. When you show gratitude towards anything, real sincere gratitude, you are inviting this experience again and again into your life. It will come. Because our subconscious mind is kind of orchestrating our reality, right? And when we show gratitude for what we do, we are intensifying those same experiences that they are bringing joy and beauty into our lives. And therefore, it will put it on a loop.
A short shout out to our amazing sponsor, the Great Courses Plus. We're so grateful to have them as our sponsor. The Great Courses Plus is an extensive library of content, lectures, courses on anything you can imagine. academic content, hobbies, how to learn the guitar, you name it. And it's completely curated and vetted, and you have all the experts talking to you about these subjects.
That's such an important point, Hans, because there's so much garbage out there right now of just people speaking about anything that that isn't really vetted in this way. This is such high quality content taught by top professors at their universities or whatever it is that they're the expert in. They get the really top people.
Yeah,
all
the Great
curated.
Courses. The Great Courses Plus is the premier online library of content and coursework, and we're just so lucky to have them as a sponsor. I'm interested in one on the sacred texts of the world. That's just going to be an amazing one. It's on my wait list.
You want to take that one together? I want to take that one.
You got it. And you know what? Our listeners are going to get the deal of the century here, because the Great Courses Plus has made an offer for 30 days, completely free access to the entire library of contents of the Great Courses Plus. So the entire library is available for free to our listeners. All you have to do is sign up at thegreatcoursesplus.com/Molly. So write it out, thegreatcoursesplus.com/Molly, MOLLY, and you can have access to this incredible library for 30 days free. And you can look at it on your iPhone, on your iPad. If you have a Roku TV, it's a streaming channel on Roku. It just doesn't get any easier to get a world of content right at your fingertips. How do you deal with sadness? When a very sad event happens in your life, I almost feel sometimes I'm preparing myself for all this work I'm doing on myself is in preparation that I can be a stronger person, centered, stronger person. But I have a fear of loss, and I know that I can be a very happy person. That's how sad I can be. It's what do you say about sadness?
Yeah. So first of all, I may not be the best person to ask about, because I can hardly remember any time in my life that I was really sad. This type of emotion is not very familiar to me. Not that I regret for it, but to be honest, I don't have much sadness in my life. I will give you example. I have lost my teacher. He passed away in 2003, and he was the person I loved most in this world. He was most dear to me, and he passed away just when I was there. He was gone. But there was no sadness. Actually, what was there most profoundly at that time when he left was gratitude. And then 3 years ago, I had a similar experience when my dear dad passed away. My father passed away, and I adored my father. He was a great person. I never single time in my life had any fight with him or any quarrel, and he was such a great guy. And he passed away, and I didn't feel sad. I felt gratitude. I was so full of gratitude for all the years that he was there for me, and all the wisdom and everything that was there. Being sad, actually, what is this sadness? Suppose I would be sad. I would be sad over what? I should not be sad over what already happened, because that was good, and there's no sadness there. We are sad for what could have been if he would have been here. But this is my choice to focus there. Instead, I choose to focus on all the beauty that was there until that day. I said it was so lovely. For 44 years, you were there in my life, and you were a great dad. Thank you so much. I felt so gratitude about it, and there was no sadness. I said, time to move on. Fine. That's fine. So in this sense, I say that I may not be the best person to preach about this.
No, I think you are the best person to talk about it, because it adds a lot of perspective.
Yeah.
Why do you think you're not sad? Like, what is it in you that's not sad about that?
Because I don't feel that I'm missing anything. I'm so happy for whatever was there.
Is it because of your connection with him that you don't feel he's separate from you, or what? I'm trying to find the.
For me, sadness is the sense of loss, right? That because it was so beautiful, it's not there for me anymore, right? I mean, that's the easy, that's
why I say I don't know exactly what to tell you, because I'm not there. I'm simply not there. I'm so, I remember standing in the funeral of my dad, and also in the funeral of my teacher. It was the similar experience. I feel it was, I would say, very spiritual experience, very deep experience. It is very uplifting also. I was not feeling sadness. I was feeling kind of exhilaration to some
that's what
degree.
I want, right? I think we all aspire for that.
So what can you recommend for Hans for all of us when we have that moment? Hans, is it okay if I share something?
Yeah.
Okay. So I know in your life, Hans, your parents are in their latter moments of their life. And I know this has been really challenging because of your deep gratitude for them and appreciation for everything, and that thought that your dad or mom won't be there to have that. So what would you recommend? I mean, if it is there, like what for us? I would feel the same way of my parents too.
Yeah. There are many things that can be said in this connection. I would say I will try to go again to something we already mentioned in another context, the role of emotions in our lives. Emotions, and it can be anger, it could be sadness, greed, it can be love. Any emotion is kind of the fuel for our thoughts, for our actions. I always give this example when I give lectures. I ask my audiences, can anybody tell me what was the menu on your lunch last Monday? Of course, nobody remembers, right? And then I asked, can anybody tell me what was the menu on your wedding day? And then you see this old lady, she got married 50 years ago, and she remembers exactly what on the menu. So I ask, please, can you tell me why do you remember something that happened 50 years ago so clearly, and exactly the same thing, a menu, it is the same thing you don't remember from last Monday? What is the difference? The difference is the emotion and the attention that is associated with it. When we do something and we bring into it an emotion and we feel it with our attention, it becomes very powerful. It is going both ways, for the good and for the worst. And we have to choose. When I am experiencing sadness, I have to understand that sadness is energy, is force. And I have to choose what do I want to do with it. Okay? I have to choose what I want to do with it. Usually, we choose between two options. One option is suppression. And we all know suppression is not good. It can be suppression or denial, both of them. It is either we deny, no, everything is okay, I'm not sad, everything is just fine. It's not helpful. Why? Because it is there and it keeps eating you from inside. Suppression means I recognize that there is sadness, but I push it down, I don't allow it to come up. Does it help? No, because it keeps eating you from the inside. Suppression or denial is not helpful. Then what do we say? We say, okay, if we don't suppress it, we have to express it, right? Expression means let it come out, bring it out, spit it out, right? We have to experience the full range of our emotions and all kinds of talking. I don't think this works either. Because when I'm expressing my sadness, I am actually deepening the same pattern that is bringing it over and over again. It is true that in the moment it will give me a relief because this energy is being released and I feel relief. But it is deepening the same pattern that brought it in the first place. And that's why it will come again next time. And the question is there a third way? Is there something else I can do other than suppress it or express it? And the answer is we want to transmute it, to transform it into something else that will be, rather than destructive, will be constructive. And here, this transmutation is something that it is for our creativity, because we are all different people, and different people find different ways to transform their emotions into something else. In my case, maybe we can say that I took this sadness. I was not happy when my teacher passed away or when my father passed away. It's not that I was happy, but I took this energy and I transformed it into something else. In this case, it was gratitude.
Yeah.
I took it and I actually channeled it into something else. Somebody else, and sometimes it is helpful to translate it into something physical and mental. Because as I have said, it is an energy, and this energy is potent, is power. You need to exhaust it. It is like fuel. You need to put it into something that will work it out. Somebody may like to go jogging, right? Put on the running shoes, put loud music in the ears, and hit the road and run and run and run and run. And after 2 hours, this energy is exhausted, right? We will want to engage our body because that helps to work it out. But also we want to engage our mind. Suppose you feel deep sadness, right? And then you decide, I want to work it out, and you sit for meditation. What is going to happen? How is your meditation going to look like? Oh, I'm so sad. I will miss him so much. And I remember that day we had this, and my meditation will turn into exactly the same thing, only mentally.
Fuel it mentally.
Exactly. And therefore, in those times when we are under the grip of those emotions or things that we want to transform, we want to engage the mind. We want to take the mind and keep it busy on something. Probably one of the best things that you can do in this state is to serve somebody else. Find somebody who needs help, and believe me, there are plenty of people out there who need help.
Is it a conscious thing for you? Like when your teacher passed away, is it or are you in that space where that transmute happens?
It was not an effort. It was not something I needed to strive to do, but it was very conscious.
Very conscious.
So conscious. It was like staring you in the face. It was so conscious, but it was not an effort. It was not a trying, but definitely it was conscious.
Mic drop. That was great. Thank you.
I would love to hear you share the story of your guru's passing. You're welcome to say no if you don't want to.
Well, yeah, it was very elevating experience. So I would be happy to share a little bit about it. It was in India, in the Himalayas. I used to have, I had an intercom in my room to his room because we knew already that he had some health issues. We kept an intercom, and one morning I used to wake up very early. I still do. Usually at 3 a.m. I get up, I take my shower, do my meditation, and there was some problem with the intercom. It was making noises, so I put it off. After the meditation, I put it on again, and just in 2 minutes, he called me, come here. So I went up to his room, and he told me that he has a strong pain in his chest. And immediately I called other swamis, other monks, and I went to bring the doctor, and it turned out that he had some cardiac arrest. Not a very severe one, but he had. So we took him to the hospital, and next morning the hospital was very bad in that place. It is a very remote place in the Himalayas. So we took him to Haridwar, which is a main city, to a good hospital. And by the time we reached there, his situation was not very good. And he was in ICU for some time. And then when he got out of the ICU, we took an apartment nearby, and we were with him, a group of monks, a group of swamis, staying with him and serving him and helping him. And I used to sleep with him in the same room to look after him. And we were there for 2 weeks. And one day, after lunch, he said again he feels some uncomfort in the chest or something. Immediately we rushed him to the hospital. They put him in the ICU, and that night he passed away. So I was not next to him at that moment, but the two Swamis that were there immediately came in the morning, and they woke us up and they said, Swamiji is gone. And immediately we did a prayer and blah, blah, blah. And then immediately we were very down to earth. They started to give missions to everybody, what to do. And they sent me to go and put his body in the lotus posture. So the way with sadhus, with monks, they don't burn them in the cremation like they do normally in India. They either bury them in the underground or they immerse them in the river, in the body in the river. And we have decided that this is what we are going to do with Swamiji, immerse the body in the river. And the way to do it is that traditionally the body is putting in a sitting position in the lotus posture. Okay? And as you may know, after a person dies, you have about 4 hours before the body becomes too stiff to move. So immediately they sent me to go and put the body in the lotus posture. And that was for me like, this is a person, he was so dear to me that I will never dare to touch him with my finger. It was like I had so much reverence for him. To touch him was like unthinkable. And now I go to the hospital, I entered to that room, there were 2 more bodies lying there, his body and myself. And I remember coming and I put my hand on his head and I said loudly, I said, that's it, Swamiji. Now you are no more in this body. From this moment, this thing, the body, is like a log of wood. And you are, for me, you are everywhere. You are everywhere. I said it and this is what I was feeling. And I was just caressing his head. And from this moment, it was just a body. It was just a log of wood. I did put it along with another Swami that came a little later. We put the body in lotus. And then we had to drive it all the way back to Kashi, which was like 6 hours drive or more. And all the way you have to hold this, that it will not fall, the body, and it starts to smell and all this stuff. But at that time, you don't feel any relation. For me, he was omnipresent. He was everywhere. It was something. And that was a very, very elevating, very inspiring, very spiritual moment in my life that I will never forget. Yeah,
I can imagine.
Yeah,
it's sort of like a real manifestation of what we believe, right? It's one thing believing it; it's another. Before that, he was older, and that one day he's going to go. And I always ask myself, as probably many people are asking, how is it going to be? Right.
Because he was my teacher, and that was the teaching. The teaching was, I am not the body, you are not the body. This is not the essence. The body is not the essence of the person. But I was asking myself, how is it going to be when actually he's going to go? And then when he actually went, I could see that he prepared me. And not only me, nothing special about me. There was all the group of Swamis there that were there. We all felt the same. It was kind of shared experience that we were prepared. He prepared us in such a beautiful way.
How did he do that?
How did he do it? Very, very subtly, in a very subtle way. Of course, it was by sharing the teachings and talking about the truth. I have lived with him for 2.5 years, and we didn't have a lot of frontal classes. He taught me Sanskrit and Hindi. This is where we spend most of the class time between us. Philosophy, he used to give some classes, but it was in Hindi, and at that time I couldn't understand much. And he didn't teach me in a frontal way. He just, by living with him, seeing how he behaves, how he interacts with people, how he is affected by things, how he responds to situations. This is how he lived. And I always tell people, he is the great monk of the Himalayas. We were talking about sports, politics, and food, I think. That's the three main topics. Spirituality was somewhere in the background. But whenever he talks about sports, about politics or food or whatever, it is always saturated with that spirituality. It was not kind of that fairy thing that always speaking about nice things. No, very down to earth, speaking about very tangible things like sports and politics. But everything is somehow saturated with this wisdom and with
Did you have a good sense of humor?
Yes. Yes.
I read a book, one of my favorite books is The Book of Joy. Have you read it?
No.
Oh, I love that book.
It's a reporter who had the opportunity to spend, I think, 2 weeks with the first time that the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Tutu spent real time together. They had met each other. They had an affinity for each other, and the Archbishop went to the Dalai Lama's residence, and they spent 2 weeks to discuss joy. And you read this book, and you think of the Dalai Lama and the Archbishop Tutu and what they stand for. The humor and the everyday, the joy they have in the everyday things. You could imagine that they could spend 2 weeks talking at a level that I can't even relate to, but they have this just general love for life and their ability to laugh at life, and that I've found when I've spoken to people that people who dedicate their life to, like you have, to really living the reality that you find inside you. I mean, I've only known you now for 3 hours. You have an incredible calmness about you. I feel like you're completely present when we talk. But on the other hand, if you walk down the street, you're just like me, right? I think that humanity that stays with us. And I think sometimes we think of like I thought of the Dalai. I have a friend who's a good friend of the Dalai Lama, and he would always say, "This is one of the funniest people I've ever met." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm sure he's really funny, right?" But I read this book, and it's not so much the funny, it's the humanity, the ability. Like when you said we discussed food and politics, that's not what I think of when you, the Swami, tell me you spent 2.5 years with the man who taught you everything you know.
Yeah.
But that's the reality of life, right?
I have this friend who is a teacher, and he told me that he was in a dinner with the Dalai Lama. And he from what you say also, you can imagine how the Dalai Lama will eat his food, right? You will imagine that he will eat very slowly and very carefully.
Yes, and enjoy
every mouthful and be very present. And he said he was enjoying the food, like he was just diving into it, enjoying every moment. That's the way it should be, I believe, right?
Yes.
It is like, when I believe truly that when we have no attachment to anything, we can enjoy so much better. When we have attachment to certain things, suppose I have attachment to my ice cream, I really crave for it, I can enjoy it only so much. But
right.
If I'm free, completely free from this attachment, how much more I can enjoy eating it? Sometimes, I live in ashrams. Sometimes people in ashrams don't exercise a lot of joy. And it is so sad. It's like, if spirituality is about joy, so if you want to be spiritual, you must have some joy in your life. You have to laugh. You have to be happy. I think so, right?
So I read this book that I don't remember, but the premise was that we all have a slash in our title. There's the thing that we do, and there's that other thing that we love. So when I was a CEO, I always said I'm a CEO/writer. I'm a CEO, but I love to write. So what's the word behind the Swami slash?
In my case?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm a Swami / crazy, I think. I think so. Yeah.
What does that mean?
I don't know. I like to do things differently. Differently from what? Differently from what people are expecting me.
Yeah.
I somehow never in my life fitted into boxes. And that's why I found myself so far away, right? A Jewish boy from a kibbutz, finding himself in the Himalayas in a monastery.
Yeah.
But this is because I never fitted into boxes. I'm always the little odd guy, which is just out there doing everything different than everybody. And I'm trying also not to fit to that box either. You know, you say the slash, but we don't want. I don't want
to be defined.
To be defined. So I don't want to be defined in the undefined box either. Yeah. I don't know, but I would tell you that maybe I would be Swami / people because I deeply love people. I think this is one thing that wherever I go, I love people. I also love being by myself, and this is what I do when I go to India. I just stay most of the time on myself, not mixing, not going much. But I love being with people, and I travel so much. I travel 6 months a year, and I usually don't stay more than 1 week in one place. And I just go and meet so many people, and I love it. I enjoy. I love people. This is my passion, to meet people, and I think people are awesome.
I do too.
Yeah.
I think people are awesome. That might be the title of my next book, if you allow me to use it. That's
if I get some royalties.
Oh yeah,
the Swami wants royalties.
If my previous 2 books are anything, your royalties might be $1.50 and a latte.
You'll buy him a falafel next time. You have to work off that falafel we had for lunch today. I would love it if you'd share. So I know, and I'm going this summer with Santiago, that you've created your own place in the Himalayas. So could you tell us more about what you're doing now with your special place?
Yeah, so first of all, about what I'm doing. As I have mentioned, I travel a lot and I teach in many, many places. I just came back from South America. I have been in Uruguay, Argentina, Chile, Bolivia, and Colombia, and now a little in the States. This morning, I came from the Bahamas. I travel to many, many places, and I share whatever knowledge I have learned to the best of my capacity with as many people as possible, and I do it in many, many different places in many different ways. Back in India, once a year, I organize a 10-day silent meditation retreat, not a Vipassana. I know Vipassana is very famous and very wonderful settings. I have developed something which I called Vicharana, which means a self-inquiry. It is a 10-day silent meditation retreat, which is very profound. I do it every year at the fall, at September, October. And right after that, I have a pilgrimage. I take a small group of people into the area where I live in the Himalayas in order to show them India that the usual tourists can never have the chance to see. During my years in India, I came to meet some extraordinary yogis. People are really, really special yogis that are away from the beaten track where the tourists go. And I have come to see very special places and very special villages, the culture. All these things I'm trying to bring in within 2 weeks, and I take people to this wonderful experience of India in a very special way. I do these 2 activities in September, October, And apart from that, I'm trying to sit quiet back in my place. And that brings us to my place. About 3 years ago, along with a friend, we went to visit a couple of friends in Uttar Kashi, in the place where I live. And they told us about a very beautiful place which is standing for sale if we want to buy it. My immediate response say, no, thank you. I'm not looking for any place. I'm not interested. I'm happy with what I have and where I am. But they say, no, just come and see and just see the place. We went there, and as soon as we got there, both of us just looked at one another and said, let's take it. It is such a profound place, amazing place. Nature and beauty and the energy there is so amazing. Immediately we decided to take it. We bought the place, and my friend was diagnosed with cancer, so he was not so much involved ever since then. So I took it upon myself. I renovated the 2 buildings that were there, and I built 2 new buildings. And now I have this small ashram that I live in, and some people come and visit and stay and study. There is a very special woman, a saint actually. She is British by birth, but she is in India since 1971. Her name is Nanima. Very, very great personality that I really appreciate. And she used to have an ashram not very far from Uttar Kashi. It was a very small, simple ashram sitting on the bank of the Ganga River. And people used to come and spend a month, 2 months in that ashram only for sadhana, only for their spiritual practice. She would give them shelter and food and guidance, whatever is needed, very, very quiet, very peacefully. And it was all by donation. She wouldn't charge any money from anybody. Then in 2013, there was a terrible flood in our area. Many, many people died, and it was a great disaster. And apart from that, her ashram was completely wiped out, was totally destroyed. In her place, nobody was hurt, but the ashram was completely destroyed, and she moved to another area, to Rishikesh, and she built a new ashram over there. When I got my place, I thought that now it is probably my duty, my opportunity to repay for all the knowledge that I received, and I was inspired by her. And therefore I have decided that I will provide a setting for people who want to come for more serious and deep study for prolonged period, on a donation basis. I don't charge money. Some people come if they don't need to pay anything. I'm happy to cover whatever they have. On the other hand, sometimes people who are not even coming, they are happy to donate and share. And this way, I'm able to manage and run the place quite smoothly. So this is my call. I love this place. I have my 2 beautiful dogs living there. And right now, my capacity is up to 5-6 people. That's it. It's not, I don't do retreats there. I don't do courses. I don't do any commercial stuff. It is just a quiet place for serious people who wants to come and practice.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Ooh, thunder struck right out as you said that. So a good sign, yeah. It's his website's heartpilgrim.org if you would like to see pictures. And it's
the name of the
beautiful.
place is Chaitanya Tapovan. It is named after my teacher, after my guru. Yeah.
So tell me, I told you one of my favorite books. I have more than one, but if you could give one book to the people you value, what?
Well, the books I usually read are Sanskrit books. They are scriptures, old text with commentaries and crazy stuff
Right.
that's
I would
not
struggle with that a
interesting
little
to
bit.
anybody. But if there is a book that I would like to recommend, there is a book called Yoga Vasishta. It is also a scripture. It is an ancient book, but it is a collection of stories that are somehow teaching the Advaita Vedanta philosophy. Sometimes crazy stories, sometimes very interesting stories, but it is kind of mind-twisting. There is a beautiful translation of Swami Venkatesananda that is relatively light and easy to read, and you just read it. Sometimes it's difficult to understand what is going on, but somehow it works on your mind. It is all the stories are around this idea that we mentioned in the beginning, that the world is like the drama and the reality is like the screen. It is just trying to show you right in the face through beautiful stories this reality, kind of brainwash you. You know, dehypnotize ourselves from our being carried away by the drama, not recognizing the screen.
Did you say dehypnotize?
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, because we are hypnotized. I also said brainwashing, you know, in our society. We brush our hair, our body we clean, we brush our teeth, but our brain, we allow it to stay contaminated and dirty, and we never bother to clean it. Is it not time that we wash our brain properly?
Yes.
It kind of have a negative connotation, but if you think about it, we have to take care of our mind, not only over our body. We have to make sure what we allow in, and also to undergo the process of purification, of cleaning all the stuff that we don't need. And therefore, yes, dehypnotizing, brainwashing. I'm welcoming these terminologies too.
I like that. I have another thing I want to ask you. Molly and I have these conversations about heroes. People have heroes, and yet when you really look into the heroes that we hear about, they're actually very, like everybody, very fallible and very, very human. What do you think about people's need to have heroes, people's desire to put things on a pedestal? I mean, to some degree, I could almost say that your teacher was a hero for you, right?
Yeah, but he was a human being. He you see, for some time, I had in my mind a question: what is so special about him? I lived with him, and he was very meaningful to me, and I was fascinated by so many things. But I asked myself, what is really so special about him? And from my experience, he had this capacity to pick up when something really was in my mind. He was able to get it. So one day, and I remember it as if it happened yesterday, we were standing in the rose garden looking at the Ganga River, and we were talking about something. And then he said a sentence. He said, "It's not easy to be a simple person." And in that moment, I knew what is so special about him. He was simple. He was so simple, and I'm so complicated. We are so complicated. And here in front of me, there is a person who is just so straightforward, so simple, there is no any pretension. There is no any mask on his face. How many masks I have on my face? Yeah. So many of them. And he has none. He is just straight there. He had weaknesses, but he would not even bother to hide them it was just there open. So his simplicity was my ideal. It is not that I took him to be a perfect person. You see, when we idealize a person, when we think a person is an ideal, we are bound to be disappointed the closer we come to know this person.
And we're imposing ourselves, it's actually us that we're imposing on that idolatry, right?
Yeah, and we say intimacy breeds contempt, right? Intimacy breeds contempt. The more we get close to a person, we start to see the different sides of them. When we idealize a person, it is just we see only one side of that person, and from there it can only go southward, right? It can never, it can never get better.
Can only disappoint.
Yeah, and therefore that is not very useful. Talking about simplicity, in our society, when you say about a person that he or she is simple, we usually mean either that person is stupid, right, or is very poor. When I suppose we see somebody and I say he is a very simple looking person, what does it mean? Either he looks a poor guy, he doesn't have money, or he looks a little dull, with mind not very developed, right? But actually, it has nothing to do with simplicity. Simplicity is not having masks over your face, is being what you are every time, at the moment, not trying to pretend, not trying to hide anything. This is just being present. And this is what is so special. And when a person is like this, then you see the full manifestation of their personality. When we look at the heroes that our children are adoring, all day long they are keeping themselves busy in hiding their defects, so you can see only the stronger points, right?
That's what Instagram's all about, by the way.
Yeah. Just we are trying to create a story, but it cannot hold water. It cannot sustain itself. And therefore, it can be very destructive. If we meet a person who is embodiment of simplicity, everything is open, and therefore there is no place for disappointment.
Would your teacher have agreed with you that he has no masks, that he is simple, or was it a journey for him?
Yes, yeah, I think so. You see, you think he would be always very kind and very sweet and very loving. He could get very angry.
Mm-hmm.
He could get very angry, and he didn't feel bad about it. No, well, the anger would not touch him, because 5 minutes later he can sit and joke with that same person. It was always there was another Swami, another monk in the ashram who was really doing some stupid stuff, and Swamiji will get very angry with him and they will fight. And I will be the cool guy who is not fighting, trying to separate them and being keeping everybody
rational.
Peaceful. Yeah. And then they will finish their fight. After 5 minutes, he will sit with him and cut jokes and start joking and laughing, and you can see there's nothing. And I will still be boiling inside.
Yeah.
The guy who stayed cool is continued to boiling inside, and for him it didn't last for more than 5 minutes. So this is what I mean. He was very human, very normal. He had some weaknesses, some advantages, but everything was right there, open, no pretension. And when you fall in love with somebody like this, you will not be disappointed, because it is all open.
Yeah.
Talk about that, would you? A love like that, a love that is open, authentic, that doesn't demand or desire to fix or change or...
Yeah, this is the love. When, as we said earlier, when in this type of love, you put the other in the center and you are in the periphery. And also the other will put you in the center and himself in the periphery. And that love is going, is binding together. It is so beautiful. And in relationships, many times it is the other way around. We put ourselves, what the other is doing to me. What do I get from this? And that love can last only so long. And then we start to build wall between us. Another point is that in our relationships, we take them for granted. And we think that love will take care of itself. Well, it won't. Love is something you need to nourish, you need to cultivate, you need to build up. In India, they have arranged marriage. And we in the West, we look kind of, what a stupid system it is. How can I fall in love with a person I don't have any relationship with? But there is actually a lot of wisdom in it, because we fall in love and then we expect love to take care of itself. It will go on, and it's not. How many times you wake up after 4 years and you ask, who is the person sleeping next to me?
Yeah.
In India, they say, I don't you don't know me. We are matching as much as possible our qualities. And now we start from ground zero. Let's build it up. Let's build up love. Let's create love. That's also not always successful. We cannot
But there's a logic there.
But there is a logic.
Yeah.
And at least it is telling you, hey, you want love? You have to work for it. We have to learn from it. I don't say that we need to start arranged marriage system. It's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying that we need to recognize that love is something we need to nourish. We need to work on. It is a hard job to keep love. It is like a gardener. We have to weed all the unwanted plants and we have to plant the seeds we want. And it is hard work. But when we do it, the sky is the limit. It becomes the most beautiful relationships.
When you travel, Molly and I, this is the first time we ask this question. It's a hard one, or sometimes maybe too cliche, but the state of the world, what needs the most attention?
Yeah, it's a hard question, but I think that what needs the most attention is our own spiritual growth. And this is the only thing I can really do. If I want to change the world, I have to change myself. Because I cannot really change the world, and the only thing that I can really change is myself. And once I change myself, that will change the world also. And therefore, if I ask myself, what is the best thing that I can do for the world, is to be a better person. If I work on my own qualities, if I work on my own spiritual growth, it is not selfish. It is the most unselfish, the most benevolent thing that I can do for humanity, and it is the only thing I can do. Those who go on shouting and out about everything that is wrong out there, they are not really helping. But those who find the inner strength in order to bring goodness in themselves, express it outside, and that creates good everywhere.
I was just going to say, because you don't just work on yourself, you spend 6 months out of the year traveling, sharing that. So being a person that lives in a cave for 40 years is also, you can be working on yourself, but you're not sharing. So
you can be in a cave for 40 years and not working on yourself.
That's true too.
And you can go all over the place and support everybody else, and that will be your work on yourself. Working on yourself doesn't mean cutting yourself from society. In most cases, it will be an expression of service. Yes. But the idea is that I cannot really change other people. I can change myself. How do I change myself? Service is one of the best ways to do it. But when I focus, how can I change you? Right? If I say now there is global warming and people have no awareness, I will create awareness in them. Of course, we can do work, we can bring out awareness. But first of all, I need to create this awareness in myself. I should create the inner strength that give me this authority, if you want. Yeah. And then it will have effect outside. And therefore, I say that the main work that I can do anywhere is the inner work, and that will ripple out.
You know, I honestly believe that the thing this world needs is empathy, and I do agree with you that starts with us. If I know myself, then I can be empathetic, and empathy is an energy.
Because you recognize yourself in the other.
Yes.
Right? When can you be empathic to another person? When you recognize your own self in that person.
Yeah. I hope that this conversation's matter is about empathy. You know, we want to get at what do people believe in, what values do they hold, and what do they want to achieve with those values, you know, in themselves. You know, it's great because I'm learning every time we have a conversation, and I hope our guests do as well. I feel it was very one-sided today. But
I don't feel so.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Not at all, actually, seriously. It was fascinating to me very much.
This is a question we've asked in each podcast so far, and it's one that we haven't asked of you yet, and I have no idea what you're going to answer, so I really want to ask. There's an Indian proverb that even if the tiger is starving, it will not eat grass. What's your grass?
My grass is meat. Even if I'm starving, I will not eat meat. And meat here is, just as the grass is a symbol, meat here also is a symbol. I'm keeping a vegan diet, and it is not because of healthy reasons. It is because I believe that by taking part in the meat and milk industry, I'm taking part in the violence that is associated with it. And I have chosen, I don't preach to other people, I don't think everybody should be like myself, but for myself, I don't want to take part in it. I believe in non-violence. I believe that if possible, as far as possible, my diet should not consist on suffering and violence to other people, to the extent that it is possible. And therefore, when I say I will starve and I will not eat meat, it may be literally, I don't know, until I'm not finding myself in that situation, I cannot say, but figuratively, it means that I will try as much as I can with all my strength not to get my own goals on account of other people. I will try to make sure that whatever I try to achieve for myself, even in their times, will not come on account of the well-being and the welfare of other people. I know it is a big statement, but this is my ideal.
I like that.
Can we just talk all day long?
Is it okay if I add something like that to my belief systems? Because I really think that's an important topic to try to achieve your goals not on the back or expense of others. Much easier said than done, but it happens all the time.
It does happen all the time. I don't look into other plates. In my plate, I can see that sometimes I do cause suffering for other people, regrettably. Now, we are living in a relative world, which basically means that if I see a snake catching a frog, and I save the frog from the snake, I took the lunch from the snake. Right? I saved the snakes, but I harmed I saved the frog, but I harmed the snake. Right? In this way, life is all relative. You are helping someone, at the same time you are hurting somebody else. We are not trying to pretend to be all good. There is no such a thing. It is always about the intention. Where I'm coming from. Am I coming from a place of compassion, of empathy, as you were saying before? Then whatever I choose is right. Whether I decided to go with the frog or with the snake. If it is coming from a place of empathy, it is a right decision. And both of us may react in a different way in a given situation, and we will both be correct because it came from empathy.
That's really interesting. I speak so much about impact versus intent. Yeah. You know, if your impact won't always be right for everybody, but your intent can be right.
Yeah. And therefore we have to question our intention. It's all start and ending there.
Yeah.
The Sanskrit word for intention is sankalpa, and one of the translations of it is that which is born from the heart. It can be really powerful to sit with that, is getting it out of the head and really going back to the value behind it. Like, what is the impetus? Like, before the thought, before the idea. What is being born of the heart? Because what's born in the heart will create harmony in your life and in the world around you.
Well, that's where the self-awareness comes in, right? You can't even understand your intent if you don't understand what you stand for, right? But, Molly talks about, I'll bastardize this, but Molly talks about this exercise, that moment when you wake up, when you're not quite awake yet. What is the thought that you woke up with? Because about as pure as it can get. It's not coming. It's some. You woke up with that feeling or that thought or that emotion for a reason. And Molly says, sit with that for a few minutes before you wake, because there's a magic in that. There's a pureness in that.
There is another exercise that Ramana Maharshi was a very great yogi. He says, when you wake up in the morning, there is a small gap between your waking up and your mind waking up. The mind is in a little delay coming after the mind, after the waking up. You wake up and still there is, this feeling that you are awake, but the mind is still sleeping. He says, try to hold it. Don't jump into the thinking. Just surf on that wave, of being awake, the mind being still asleep. This is so powerful. And then once the mind kick in, look into this thought and see what it is. Be with it. And
what's also interesting is that in that moment when your mind is not there yet, you actually feel your body before your mind. Mm-hmm. And that to me is very similar to meditation. When I meditate, it's when I'm almost like thinking with my body instead of my mind. I'm feeling my emotions. I'm feeling what I'm thinking. And that space when you wake up in the morning is almost the same feeling, is that your mind is subservient to you as opposed to you to the mind. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it is also, every morning when you wake up is a form of rebirth. We can also think about it in this sense that you are reborn. Mm-hmm. Every morning you are kind of entering back. Before the old stories, everything is coming back. It is kind of a womb or something sheltering and some very primitive state, but is very authentic.
Do you know what my first thought was this morning? Just as I was coming back into the body, I had this deep impression of a feeling of oneness. And even as I close my eyes now, I can feel it. And it felt like a triangle, just as we're sitting now, we're sitting in a triangle, but it had this feeling of the sankalpa of this, a deep intention of a sincere desire to alleviate suffering and the flavors with which we each do it. But I felt a sense of oneness in the sankalpa of knowing that all three of our heart's deepest intentions is that, to alleviate suffering in our own special ways. And it feels like that. I hope that it has done that for everyone listening, or that you got some morsel or feast of wisdom that enriched the soul. So
I woke up with a deep sense of insecurity about, can I interview a Swami that Molly has told me so much about? And I'm once again reminded that I'm just really talking to a great human being, and it's been easy and fun, and it's been really, really enjoyable. So.
I slept over, so I woke
You had to go catch a plane?
You had complete peace and tranquility. There you go, the three manifestations here.
And I'm going to say it out loud. Like 2 days ago, I was anticipating, I was kind of doing like the week's review of like what was coming. And I had this in my meditation, that happened in meditation, but I had this image, this flash come in of the three of us in India. So I'm putting it out there. Maybe someday this will occur.
Here is a formal invitation in front of the whole world. Both of you are most welcome.
But you said it was for like really serious thinkers. I need to.
You're right there.
You think I'm there?
I think
totally
so.
There.
All right. I'm in. Thank you so much. Our podcast, Conversations Matter, is produced by Amalia Briggs. Our sound engineer is Matthew Tucker, and our amazing sponsor is The Great Courses Plus. Thank you. We couldn't do it without you.